I took my mom to Australia, and I traveled with her and her sister, and they're conventional Canadians, and they were accustomed to believing CTV, believing Lloyd Robertson, believing the CBC. And, for a long time, that wasn't completely unreasonable, right? The legacy media in Canada, like most Canadian institutions, was pretty damn solid, centrist, pretty reliable. And then it wasn't. And that started probably 15 years ago, maybe something like that. About when you guys, popped your head above the turret. And you imagine someone like her or her sister, these conventional, hardworking, middle class or working class Canadians who are accustomed to trusting their institutions. And then all of a sudden, all of that goes sideways. And they're asked to believe things like what we're talking about. They're asked to believe that the food pyramid's a scam, and that the school systems were set up by fascists, and that the WF is a global conspiracy of crypto-fascists who want to take everybody's vehicles, and that there are gangs operating at a scale in the UK that involve maybe 1 million girls. No one knows, right? No one knows.
Yeah.
And even that's like, is it 10,000?
Yeah.
Is it 100,000?
Yeah.
Is it 1 million? Oh, we don't know. Well, maybe you should look into it. Well, if you're in the shoes of a person like that, you either have to believe that everything that you thought was true in your life is flipped upside down, or that you're being scammed by conspiracy theorists. Well, of course you're going to believe the latter, because why the hell wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you have to kind of be dragged. Even Michael Schellenberger, he broke the W-Path story, right? That's that preposterous group of perverted psychopaths who purport to be experts in psychopathology and have defined the standards of care for gender-affirming butchery conducted on minors. That's W-Path, run by Marcy Bowers. I think it's Bowers or Bows, who's a transsexual surgeon who was involved in the Jazz Jennings case, which they made a reality TV show out of. Yeah, that W-Path. Well, Schellenberg told me when I interviewed him that I had interviewed was it Helen Joyce or Abigail Schreier? I talked to both of them, who were early investigators into the gender-affirming scandal. He said when he first heard the interview, he couldn't believe it was true.
Yeah.
And that's Schellenberger, and he was a lefty back in the day and clued in and woke up, and he's a hell of a investigative journalist. But even Schellenberger couldn't believe it. And there's like 50 things that are happening that you can't believe. Yeah. And that's, one of the things that you guys have done in Rebel News is like you've been on the forefront of cracking these preposterous stories. And then, you're arrested for your trouble in Canada. It's so preposterous. It's like, how the hell did Canada become a place where, well, first of all, muckraking journalists are necessary, and they certainly are. That bloody CBC, right? It's $1.5 billion a year, plus $600 million in advertising from the federal government. To have no audience. They have no audience, right, except people over 60. And they've been struggling to get a purchase on YouTube for like 10 years. They've disallowed comments because that's how clueless they are. And no one watches their material. Like, they literally get hundreds of views, which means that even the staff that made the shows don't watch them, right? And so here we are in Canada. And Mark Carney's come along to save the Canada, but really to save the planet. And Canadians are daft enough to start, you can see the scales tilting in his favor, I mean, we were going to decimate the Liberals because Trudeau's been such an absolute bloody nightmare catastrophe in his narcissistic and incompetent manner. And now Carney's coming waltzing in from the Bank of England with his ESG and his DEI and his net zero and his you don't need fossil fuels, peasants, or cars. And Canadians are lining up to vote for him. Jesus.
I saw an opinion poll about Trump's idea, his social media banter about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Yeah.
Now, I think he just likes poking at Trudeau. Trump is a master of the insulting nickname. Like, he's just got that
he sure
Manhattan.
is. He's definitely got, that's an art.
He's an entertainer, and he's a quick-thinking, mischievous fellow.
Yeah.
So he met with Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago, and he detected certain
He didn't let him stay there that night.
No, and he poked at him a bit.
Yeah.
The thing is, 10 years ago, you would have said to Canadians who want to join the States, I think Canadians would say, no, first of all, we're wealthier. There was a point in time when the average Canadian, on an individual basis, was wealthier than...
Yeah, well, we've dispensed with that. It's 60% now.
There were a lot of things that the Canadians would say, we really like America, but boy, we're glad.
We're good.
But what's happened over the last 10 years on everything forget tangible things like money, mass immigration, crime. What about intangibles? What about a prime minister who took John A. Macdonald off our $10 bill, who says the country
has no national identity, but insults Daniel Smith for not being patriotic enough to sacrifice the Alberta economy to Canada, a Canada that's a patriarchal, oppressive, what would you say, post-colonial identityless state.
And he said those things in an interview with a foreign newspaper nonetheless. It was the New York Times. But not just that, Trudeau says we're a genocidal country. And the genocide continues. He says we're sexist, transphobic. In so many ways, he makes grand apologies all the time, but not for himself, for the country. So you've had almost 10 years of him degrading and demoralizing and denaturing, cutting people off from our roots and our history and our culture and identity. So
and destroying the economy at the same time.
So if you're a young man, and you want to buy a home and start a life and get a job, all of those things, a lot of young people live with their parents till well into their 30s, not because of their failure to launch. You can't buy a home in Canada. It's twice as much in the States.
No, we don't have much land,
But all of a sudden, when Trump says, would you like to join the U.S.? We'll trade in your dollars at par. There'll be no tariffs and you'll have a strong military. You know what? You're a young man. And for 10 years, you've been told by Trudeau that your country means nothing. It's just a hotel.
Worse than nothing.
And here's this strong, masculine guy who's commanding authority, and he truly is making America great again. And when he says that, it's plausible. And when he says
he's got these monsters like Musk on his side who are tromping through the grapevine.
And the world is bending the knee to him, whether it's the Japanese prime minister or a Korean investor or whatever.
And he just made a deal with the Japanese prime minister.
$1 trillion deal.
For a deal where Trudeau had, because the Japanese prime minister had come to Canada and Trudeau said, we can't make a business case for that.
So is it surprised that young men of all the demographics say, you know what, I'll take Trump up on that deal? I forget I think it was 43%. I think 43% of young men, I'm going from memory here, said, yeah, we'll take that deal. And that's without a campaign. That's just based on a few tweets.
Casual.
And Instagram. And there's many things to love about America. I mean, there's an amazing number of things to love about America. But imagine abandoning your history, your culture, your tradition, your borders, your institutions. That's how Trudeau has eroded in the country. And I don't blame Trump for finding that weakness and shaking it. That's what you do when you're America first. You get, and when you're negotiating.
And I don't think Canada's learned a damn thing from it yet. I mean, the Quebec premier came out this week and basically said there was no damn way they were going to put pipelines across the country. Right? You can't make an economic or a global case for that. It's like, hey, have it your way, buddy. Where do you think your transfer payments are going to come from if Alberta decides to pack up and leave?